Cephalopods, squids, octopi, whatever you want to call them, I'm sure what comes to mind are big heads, many tentacles, and maybe the calamari you order for an appetizer. Regardless, they come in many shapes and sizes, but some don't fit neatly into either category. This is the issue with the vampire squid. The name alone brings to mind a squid and a blood-sucking monster, but this couldn't be further from the truth. Vampire squid has traits of both the octopus and the squid, but also some unique to itself. So the question becomes, where does it belong? I've always been interested in marine life. I would even read books about it when I was younger. So this is a question I've asked myself a lot. But by looking at the traits of the vampire squid, specifically what it has in common with either group, as well as what it has unique to itself, we can shed some light on that question. Now, this is important to anyone who's interested in marine life because cephalopods are just that important. They are the smartest group of spineless animals. Maybe you've seen the videos of an octopus that's able to open jars, or squids that hunt in packs. We only see that kind of behavior in animals with spines, and even then it's mostly mammals. So an important question to answer is, when did they get so smart? By looking at the vampire squid, we can have an idea of when the squids and octopi branched off from each other, and see when the smarter branches came to be. But to understand what makes the vampire squid similar and different from these two groups, it'd be a good idea to get acquainted with them first. So I'll be speaking first about squids, then octopi, and then what the vampire squid has that's unique. Starting with squids, they have many traits that make them unique, both internally and externally. Externally, we can see that the squid has a long tapered head with two fins on either side. For the most part, this is unique to squids. We can also see that the squids have 10 limbs, 8 arms, and 2 tentacles. This is unique to only squids, so we could say it defines the whole group. Looking internally, we see another trait that defines squids, the internal bone. When looking at a squid, you would think that it has no bones at all, but this internal bone is what keeps its head shape, and it's unique to squids. Now, we'll see later that vampire squids have some traits that match with squids, but we should still take a look to make sure that they don't relate more to octopi. The octopi has many similar traits to the squid, but it also has a few that make it unique. Looking at the external features, we can see an octopus has 8 limbs, missing those 10th arms that a squid has. So, already we see that the octopus is defined by its 8 limbs. That's why it's called the octopus. Looking internally, we can see that there's no bone, which goes to show that the squid is unique in that it has that bone. In fact, the Tree of Life project, a project by scientists across the globe to track evolution, says that this internal bone, called the gladius, is unique only to decapodiforms, another word for squid, as well as one other group. So now that we've seen what makes the octopus and the squid unique from each other, let's look at the vampire squid and see where it lies. Vampire squid has traits of both the octopus and the squid. We can see externally that it has fins, much like a squid does, but it also has 8 arms. So if it has these 8 arms, does it mean that it's an octopus? Well, that's the only trait it shares with an octopus. Looking internally, we can see that it still has the bone. This internal bone is unique only to squids and the vampire squid. So it really does seem like it's right in between the two groups. However, the vampire squid has traits unique to itself that set it apart. For example, Oceana, a project dedicated to studying and protecting the world's oceans, defines the vampire squid as non-predatory. It does not predate on other animals, and instead it uses 2 different strings each coated in sticky cells to filter feed. This behavior isn't seen in either squids or octopi. Furthermore, Mark Carnell, the curator at the Oxford University Museum of Natural History, goes on to explain the DNA of different cephalopods, and that the vampire squid is separate from the octopi. The only way to group it as an octopus genetically would be to make an entire branch of cephalopods, octopi. That's why it's traditionally kept separate. So in this presentation, we've seen that the vampire squid has traits of the octopus, that being the 8 limbs, and the squid, that being the internal bone, as well as some traits unique to itself, such as those sticky filament. Because of this, scientists, for the most part, agree that it isn't a squid or an octopus. Instead, it's its own group that may be an ancestor of both. So, if the story of the vampire squid has taught you anything, let it be this. It's the traits of something that define what it is. Names can be misleading. Thank you.